Okay, this is Grant Putnam. I'm at the Hafner residence on Whortleberry Road in Reading. Just want to point out a few of the health issues with the plants and trees. Okay, this blue spruce has cytospora canker. Okay, it's a disease that they can get. It's nothing you're really going to be able to do about this, so you might as well, at some point just cut it down when it totally dies. Okay. Um, So you have two dogwood trees. You have a dogwood tree here, another dogwood tree there, a snow fountain cherry there, and there's two plum trees in the property. The plum trees get something called black knot fungus. It's very, very common, and if they get it, then most likely the tree will die. So my suggestion is to try to prevent that doing fungicide sprays in the spring. When you do the fungicide sprays for the black knot fungus for the two plum trees, you might as well also do fungicide sprays for dogwoods. They're not as prevalent to get issues, but if you're already here doing an application, it doesn't take that much more time nor cost to do the dogwoods as well. Okay. Then there's a white birch tree behind the house that actually has boar's insect, which is again very, very common. So most people that have a Jackmontite birch, which is that white birch, end up having to do a spring systemic to basically prevent or kill that insect problem. When you're doing the systemic on that, I would also do the systemic on this white weeping cherry at the same time, because again, that's also very susceptible to getting, that's actually susceptible to getting something called peach borers, which is another boring insect. Okay, so that would be the concept as far as that goes. The other evergreens, other shrubs in the property, some of them have mites, which is why some of them, like for example the dwarf Alberta spruce, which are these tall ones here. Those dwarf Alberta spruce, sometimes they're browning in certain areas. Those are little tiny insects called mites. They're sucking the sap out of the plant. So there's a lot of little insects. You might as well end up doing 2 summer foliar sprays of horticulture oil, which is a really safe way of basically just suffocating the insect population that negatively damages the plants. Okay. And lastly, when you're doing this spring systemic with this imidacloprid chemical, you'd again do the white birch tree, the weeping cherry, and all your boxwoods, which are here, because those get something called leaf miner. And leaf miner is, again, very prevalent with boxwoods. And again, if you're here already doing a systemic, you might as well hit the boxwood with the same chemical imidacloprid systemically, using a deep root needle, feeding it down into the ground. Okay, and then this way the plant sucks it up, and it gives it 1 year of protection against these very common insect issues. Okay. I think we should end up trimming the trees this year. So specifically, I would trim the 2 plum trees in the property and the 1 birch. The magnolia behind the driveway still looks actually pretty nice. I don't think you have to touch that. And then I would obviously trim the other plants on the property. You could do trimming. I think on this property you could probably do 1 trimming end of spring and another trimming more early fall. Okay. So you could probably do it in 2 visits, and then this way you can keep the plants as far as size and tame and looking thicker, better, and whatnot. Okay, there is quite a few plants here, so when you're doing the plants, we could also pull the weeds if need be. So, but for example, even like the Colorado blue spruce, you have 2 more over here. Those are also susceptible to the cytospora canker, which is what disease that attacked that one. So there's nothing you can really do about that, though. But I think those look relatively healthy. They just look a little bit sparse because they're planted in the shade. Okay. We talked about possibly moving some of these big rhododendrons over in front of the air conditioning or the generator. Okay, so maybe you might end up moving, looks like you could probably move at least these 2. There's a third one over there, but it's a little smaller, so maybe these 2 big ones that are about 5 by 5. Okay, in the future you might consider kind of renovating the landscaping in the front of the house as a separate project and as a future project. I would consider doing some mulch and putting down some pre-emergent weed control before it's mulched this spring. It'll save a lot on the hourly weeding, having to come out here and weed everything all the time. So if you do a thin layer of mulch, it might make sense to do that this spring. And every spring, if you put about a ½ inch down, you'll actually save money because you're replacing what's decomposed from the previous year, and you're putting more of a weed blanket down. So you end up actually saving money and saving time, not having to weed all the time. The Winding Roses Weigela, which are here, actually look a lot better than they did a couple of years ago when we trimmed them. Just need to be trimmed again, and they'll keep on getting more of a denser plant. We talked about extending the patio in this area, and widening the steps so they're about the same distance between the two posts, from this post to this post. So the steps would probably be about 8 feet wide, so it's much more inviting. Leaving more of a planting bed in between the existing patio and the new patio coming out. Okay, and then this way you're tying into the walkway, tying into this area. You're dealing with more of a level area. Thinking about putting a fire pit as like almost a separate space off to the side. That's another idea. You'll need a retaining wall on this side because you can see the grade drops. So you'll need some sort of retaining wall. Doesn't have to be. We're not going to be very tall, but just to kind of retain the earth. Okay. We could also extending the steps, so I'm going to give you a recommendation on maybe a specialist to kind of rework the deck, okay, as far as extending the steps and then making, possibly refacing the columns and putting in more of a water membrane as a roof so you guys can sit out here at any time of the year. I mentioned I would put together kind of like a Chinese buffet of the other maintenance services we provide. So one of those is the lawn fertilizing. So I'll give you, a quote on that as well. I would suggest using extended round